class. I hope you all are having a great day and being good for the sub. Let's go ahead and talk about Act 3, Scene 4 and 5. So this is the second half of Act 3. So it starts with a scene where Lord Capulet and Paris are talking, and Capulet's kind of talking about how Juliet's grieving Tybalt's death, and he's saying it's really late and they need to go to bed in this conversation. Paris says, this is on page 124, Paris says, these times of woe afford no time to woo. So he's saying like these times of grief and mourning, they just, killed Tybalt, have no time to woo. So he's saying, give me your daughter. I want to go ahead and marry her. He says, commend me to your daughter. So he's trying to make Lord Capulet move forward with the marriage. Now, what does Lord Capulet say to that? Lord Capulet, oh, by the way, if I ask a question, you can pause, think about it. If you're talking with a group, you can go ahead and just pause, talk within the group and say your thoughts and then play again. So Lord Capulet says, yes, he is actually okay with them going forward with the marriage this time, instead of like in the past, he had told Paris that Juliet was too young, that he needed to wait, that he needed to woo her. He says, Capulet tells his wife, he says, wife, go you to her ere you go to bed, acquaint her here of my son Paris's love, and bid her mark you me on Wednesday next, but soft. What day is it? So he's like, okay, wife, Lady Capulet, go tell Juliet that she's going to be married to Paris, and tell her she's going to be married to Paris on Wednesday. And then he's like, hold on, wait a minute. What day is it? Paris lets him know that it's Monday. And Capulet says, Monday, haha, well, Wednesday is too soon. Oh, Thursday, let it be. So what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about the fact that Capulet is one, okay, marrying off Juliet without consulting her first, but two, it's Monday and he's marrying her off on Thursday, okay, because Wednesday is too soon, of course. So pause, talk about that for a minute, what your thoughts are. Your discussion, if you just talked, you should have hopefully talked about like the fact that his authority, he's taking complete authority over Juliet. He's not giving her input, and it just, shows how parents can control the lives of children. And especially during this time period, fathers had complete control over their daughters. So, putting it into context of the time when this was written and when it's said. How does fate seem to be working against Romeo and Juliet at this moment? The marriage to Paris definitely is going against, Romeo and Juliet's plans to be together. Lord and Lady Capulet still have no idea that Juliet is married to Romeo. So they, it kind of just seems like fate's against them, and there keeps being more plans that interfere with their love. And it just creates another obstacle for them. Let's see. Let's go ahead and skip over to scene 5 here. So scene 5 starts on 126. So that begins with Romeo and Juliet, and again, they're talking in her backyard, but this time the conversation is a lot different. I want you to go ahead and pause and think or talk about what this scene entails and how that conversation between them goes. So very different as far as the first balcony scene and Act 2, Scene 2. They're very much in love. They're throwing themselves into this romance. But now it's much different, okay? They're sad. They know that Romeo's going to have to leave. He's been banished. Juliet is not happy about it, okay? So they're kind of like saying their last goodbyes right now. Really sad. And Romeo says, I must be gone and live or stay and die. So he's like, if I don't leave, I'm going to be killed because I'm supposed to be banished. And Juliet keeps talking about like the daylight's coming up and she doesn't want him to leave, and they're just sad, okay? At the bottom of 127, very last line of Juliet, she says, oh, now be gone, more light and light it grows. What does that mean? So the light and light it grows, it's morning time, the sun's coming up, okay? And Romeo says, more light and light, more dark and dark are woes. So what do you think he's saying there? He's saying that the more the sun comes up, the more light there is, the darker they're, the more sorrowful they feel, okay? Because that's just the closer the time's ticking to them having to leave each other and not see each other for who knows how long. So they're very sad that the sun's coming up. So how does the imagery of light and dark change meaning in this scene? Go ahead and think about that or discuss it. I'm gonna repeat that one more time. How does the imagery of light and dark change meaning in this scene? So if we go ahead and look back on the last balcony scene, remember when Juliet was like, oh my gosh, if my family finds you, they're going to kill you. And Romeo's like, nope, it's dark, we're fine. So that kind of set up like darkness as a protection for them, as like a way to live out this secrecy of this romance. Well, now the light is kind of like representing like this separation between them. And it's like danger for them as well. When the sun comes up, he has more of a chance of being caught and being seen, right? So it kind of contradicts like that previous protection of that darkness. Now it's like the danger of it becoming light outside. So again, it's very twisted than what we would usually have a connotation of for light and dark. Let's see. What warning does Juliet describe in her vision of Romeo leaving? Let me repeat that one more time. What warning does Juliet describe in her vision of Romeo leaving? Okay, so she says on page, nope. Where is it at? Just a second here. On page 129, she's saying goodbye to Romeo, and she says, methinks I see thee, now thou art below, as one dead in the bottom of a tomb. So, as one dead in the bottom of a tomb. So we have like this like motif of death and this really like dark and twisted imagery as Romeo and Juliet are saying goodbye to each other, which kind of, you know, makes the tone sad and gloomy. Then we go into that conversation where Lady Capulet comes into the house and starts talking to Juliet, because remember, Lord Capulet had sent Lady Capulet to go talk to her and like break the news that she's getting married on Thursday. So she comes in and Juliet's like all crying, she's sad. What is the reason that Juliet kind of gives for why she's like so distraught? And what does Lady Capulet think she's so distraught over? So she thinks she's crying over Tybalt's death and thinking she's grieving that. So she doesn't really think twice about it, you know, like she's not like, why are you crying? Like, what boy are you caught up on? She thinks she's mourning her cousin. So there's really not like a second question about that. And then they start talking, and Lady Capulet actually starts to mention Romeo. What does she say she's going to do to Romeo? She says that she is going to send somebody to kill Romeo, to poison him more specifically. So then Juliet, she doesn't want to like reveal the truth of their relationship. So she pretends to agree with her mother, and she speaks in a way that sounds supportive of her mother, but like really she's expressing her love for Romeo. She actually offers, she says like, I'll be the one to go mix the potion, the poison, to go poison him, but really she just wants to see him. She says at the bottom, very, very bottom of page 131, she says, oh, how my heart abhors to hear him named and cannot come to him. So she's kind of making it sound like she doesn't like him and she hates him to her mom, but like we know that she's sad and she's distraught over not being able to see him. So then Lady Capulet like introduces the idea. She's like, okay, so what do you think about getting married on Thursday? And Juliet's like, I will not be doing that actually. And Lady Capulet's like, okay, well, here comes your father, so you go ahead and tell him that yourself. And then Lord Capulet comes in and he's like, okay, why is she crying? Like, this is crazy. Anyway, have you delivered the news? And Lady Capulet was like, yes, I told her she's getting married, but she says no. And she's, you know, like, she doesn't want to really break the news to her husband, but she does. And Capulet, how does he respond to that? Capulet gets extremely angry and he starts insulting Juliet, and he threatens to disown her completely if she does not go through with this. He calls her on the top of page 135. He calls her a disobedient wretch, just saying that he will not put up with her not marrying Paris. He says, I tell thee, get thee to church on Thursday, or never look me in the face. Speak not, reply not, do not answer me. So he's saying, like, if you do not get your butt to the church and marry Paris on Thursday, you're done. You're cut off. You're disowned. You will not be living with me. And he like says something like he'll like let her live on the streets. He doesn't care. Lady Capulet, when Juliet asks for help, Lady Capulet does not back her, leaves her to fend for herself, and leaves the room and lets them argue it out. And then afterwards, this all happens, Juliet kind of turns to the nurse for advice. And what advice does the nurse give her? So the nurse actually tells her that she should marry Paris and claims that he would be a better husband. So how do you guys think that made Juliet feel in that moment when the nurse says that she should marry Paris? We can assume she probably felt pretty betrayed, right? This whole time the nurse has been, at first she was reluctant, but she very quickly fell into supporting Juliet and her romance with Romeo, just for her to completely turn around now and say, like, nope, forget Romeo, go ahead and marry Paris, he's a better option. So she no longer has anybody on her side. Romeo's banished. The nurse doesn't support their relationship anymore. She's telling Juliet to marry Paris. And her parents don't know, nobody else knows about Romeo, so she's completely alone at this point, okay? So she pretends to agree with nurse, okay, to like not raise any suspicion, but she secretly plans to go see who and do what? She's gonna go see Friar Lawrence, okay, and she's gonna ask him for help, and then her plan is that if he cannot help her, she's going to kill herself, okay? So we have that idea again of them being like, oh my gosh, if I can't see Romeo, if I can't see Juliet, I'm literally going to kill myself, okay? That is what Juliet is her plan, okay? That is what we leave off on the chapter, on page 139. At the very end, she says, I'll go to the friar to know his remedy. If all else fail, myself have power to die. So if he doesn't help me, I'm going to kill myself. She says that to herself, so nobody knows where she's going or what she's doing, okay? She's completely isolated. She's alone. Nobody knows what she's thinking right now. So that's how we end off. A couple of critical thinking questions I will throw your way and will not answer, but if you want to pause and talk about them or think about them, you can. 1, how does authority create conflict in this scene? And then explain using Lord Capulet's actions. 2, how does Juliet's isolation increase the tension of the play? 3, how does Shakespeare use foreshadowing in Romeo and Juliet's farewell? And 4, which motif is strongest in this scene? Authority, isolation, fate, or loyalty? And explain your reasoning. All right, if you are watching this independently and not working with a group, you just kind of followed along and listened, what I need you to do is I need you to go on to this assignment on Classroom and respond to 1 or 2 of the critical thinking questions in the comments, and that will count as your discussion for this. If you work together as a group and you have discussed these alongside me, you're good. You don't need to do anything else as long as everybody has a good understanding and nobody wants to bring up any other points. And yeah, that is all I have. If you have any questions, please email me and I'll try my best to get back to you. But otherwise, I hope everybody is having a fantastic week. And the next assignment for you all is just going and reading Act 4. It is, you're reading all scenes of Act 4, so 1 through 5, but it's a pretty short act, so it shouldn't take you long to get through it all. Please let me know if you need anything. Bye.